Well, we're proud to announce that Reebok,
What?
the home of the Legacy Lifter training shoe, is now part of the PowerCast. They are going to be our shoe sponsor from this point forward.
Look at these guys. Yeah, I really like the Legacy Lifter. I lift both in flats and in Olympic lifting shoes, and the raised heel on this one is a little bit different than the previous ones they made, the previous Olympic lifting shoes they made. A lot of the other shoes that they made, they created for kind of a combination of things, so you can do some CrossFit stuff in between your Olympic lifts and in between your squats and stuff like that. This one is more designed specifically for just some heavy lifting, some big squats, front squats, back squats, things like that. And I like the shoe a lot. It's heavier, it's stiffer, and it also is elevated a little bit more than the previous shoes they've made before.
And you feel like you can get a good firm grip on the floor in them?
Yeah, I can I can screw my feet into the floor really well. On top of that, I can get a little bit better depth because, again, the elevated heel.
Right, yeah. For me personally, I haven't needed that, but I know a lot of people who do.
Yeah.
Because remember how people used to squat with a nickel plate or a dime plate under their heels?
Absolutely, yeah.
Basically, it's the same thing.
Right. And then now you have something that's stiffer that's going to also give you some ankle support as well.
Right.
And I really like the shoe quite a bit.
Awesome. Well, head over to Reebok.com and invest in your training by snagging yourself a pair of the Legacy Lifters for your next lifting session. They are made of high-quality perforated leather and mesh for ventilation. These 3/4-inch lifting shoes have been tried and true by thousands of weightlifters and powerlifters. Check them out at Reebok.com. Go follow at Reebok on Instagram.
They also look really cool. You got the gold one, you got the white and black one. They look awesome.
Yep, they do.
Looking slick.
Support for this episode of the PowerCast comes from Movement Watches. Go to mvmt.com/PowerCast for 15% off your entire order plus free shipping. Ape Man apparel for people who lift heavy weights at apemanstrong.com. Compex muscle stim products at compexusa.com. Use the code PowerCast and get an additional 28% discount. HowMuchYouBench.net, home of Mark Bell's Slingshot. Use the code PowerCast and get 15% off slingshots and free shipping on orders of $100 or more. And bodybuilding.com. Bodybuilding.com is the world's largest fitness website and supplement store. Bodybuilding.com has free plans for every level. Visit bodybuilding.com today to become your best self. Hey, this is Jim McDonald. Welcome to episode 211 of the PowerCast. This episode is part 1 of 2 with Matt Wenning. We did so much with Matt. We did over 2 hours and 20 minutes until the cameras started to die, as a matter of fact. So the smartest thing I could think to do was to break it up into two parts, especially since I need to get on a plane in a couple hours here. So anyway, this is part 1. This is mostly about his reflections on training at Westside and some of our shared experiences in the powerlifting world. Part 2 is more your questions for Matt that we addressed in the course of the show. So enjoy this episode, like and share it. Immediately following this is my a brief conversation with Michael Fahey, one of the directors of the Westside Versus the World project, something that deserves your support.
Recorded live in West Sacramento, California, this is Mark Bell's PowerCast. Standing just to the left of Jim McDonald, here's your host, Mark Bell.
Unfortunately, we're graced with the presence of the weakest person ever walk inside the doors of Super Training Gym, the legendary Matt Wenning. It's always awesome having you here.
I thought you were talking about cool. Andrew for a second.
I was talking about Smokey is how I started out, and then I switched gears a little bit. But it's great having you here. We've all been inspired and excited about watching your lifting career over the years, and getting to know you better and stuff has been a cool part of all that as well. But what I get excited about is seeing you do all the different lifts that you're doing all the time. You're, and it gets me fired up because it's something new all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, like that looks like fun. Is the thing I think of when I see it, even though you're lifting like some crazy amounts of weights. But
well, I mean, that's the thing is you have to keep it fun, and at this point of the game, it's hard to keep it fun. You've been doing it for 25 years, and everybody thinks, oh, he's a workout maniac. I can't not go to the gym.
Right.
But when I'm sitting at home, sometimes I'm, man, do I really want to fucking go in and squat today?
Yeah.
Or do I want to go in and deadlift? People think we don't have those issues, and we both know that we do. But the trick is, it's always fun to me if it's something a little bit different all the time that I can tax myself and not feel like I'm beating myself into the ground.
Maybe we could have it make more sense, especially to somebody like Smokey. Like Smokey's into like these documentaries. He's big into adult documentaries. I guess we'll just call him for today.
Okay.
And so when you watch these like adult documentaries,
Do they have midgets in them?
well, I'm
Because I
getting
might be interested.
Only when he's on screen.
I'm getting to that part actually. When you're watching these adult documentaries, you don't watch the same ones all the time.
No, it's boring. You already know where the money shots come in and
You
everything.
you get variety,
Yeah,
right?
you
So
have to-
variety is the spice of life, and variety is the spice of training, right?
I think that was one of the things
different stimulus.
fun about going when I used to drive over and train with Chuck. 2.5 hour drive. I'd get out of the car.
You'd watch documentaries with them.
No, but my point. Yeah, that'd be one of the most weird motherfuckers to watch that shit with. But what made it fun was when I was driving there, I had no idea what the fuck we were doing that day.
Kind of nervous
Which
about
is
it too.
it's
You're
nerve,
like, what
it's
are we?
nerve-wracking, but
Yeah.
also it's kind of fun to let somebody else have the reins. But you and I have been in charge of lots of groups and ourselves and our training. Sometimes knowing what you have to do that day can be draining. So
Yeah.
people ask me sometimes, "Do you write down what I do?" After I get done doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't lay out my training anymore. I walk in with an open mind and try to figure out what I want to do that day.
Well, actually, there's a really good saying that kind of goes along with that. The only thing to ever be afraid of is the future, right? Because you don't know what it holds for you. Like even if you're going to bungee jump off of like a 100-foot building, you're scared of what's going to happen next when you're on top of that building. You're not sure what's going to happen, and so you get a lot of anxiety, built up. And if somebody writes that you have to do, a squat with 500 pounds for 5 sets of 3 reps, it's like stuck in your mind all week, and you're like, I don't know, like it's going to be heavy.
So often on social media, you see people say, I couldn't sleep last night because I was thinking about what I have to do in the gym tomorrow. I was like, well, that doesn't sound like fun. That doesn't sound sustainable.
And I'm sure we've had questions of the same nature on that thing, but the big thing with training is in season, I know exactly what I have to do when I walk in that gym. Out of season, I don't. That's one of the biggest mental changes in my training off season to in season is what I do 15 weeks out getting ready for a competition. I know exactly what I have to do every day.
So in season, there's you're preparing for the competition, and there's certain things that just have to get done.
Yes, exactly.
Especially at your level, you've broken multiple world records.
There's a certain amount of volume and intensity that has to be put into that workout.
Let's talk about that a little bit. We were talking about you the other day in here. Nothing but bad things usually when we're talking about you. Talking about how dumb you are with your training.
Yeah,
and how you get hurt all the time and everything else. No, it's remarkable to watch you. You mentioned to me earlier that your first 800-pound squat was in 2003?
2003. Yeah, at Men's Nationals, USAPL, drug tested.
That's fucking crazy.
Walked out.
So a single-ply suit probably.
Yeah, I mean, back then it was still in its infancy of what it would do.
It gives you 30 pounds.
You got to remember, an 800-pound squat at that time in the USAPL was still fairly rare. Yeah. I mean, the top guys in that.
Still pretty rare now.
Yeah. Now you got some guys that can do it.
There's some raw guys,
Yeah, but back then, we just the knee wraps were not really, they're in their infancy as far as technology. Mm-hmm. And even if they were a little better.
Would you have some of the Gold Line Inzer ones from back in the day?
I actually, those were some of my favorite. Those are the wraps that I used to squat 1197 in gear. Was the red ones.
Oh, that
came
the
out.
red line,
the elite ones that came out. They were exactly the same as the gold lines, but I never liked anything that was that gangster on my knee. Mm-hmm. For me, it was never putting on too much shit to make me lift weights. I had to be comfortable because the bar is already, 1,200 on your back's already uncomfortable. Right. So if my knees feel like they're falling asleep.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. 1,197 pounds.
0.6. Yeah. So, okay.
How dare you take credit for 1,200 pounds?
Yeah. But, the thing of it was, Ed Cohen, Wrap My Knee Wraps, called me up on that squat, and I had to have him back those knee wraps off probably 60% of what he wanted to do. And he goes, you don't wear them that tight? I go, fuck no, I can't. I like to be able to feel my feet when I got 5 times body weight on my back.
I experienced that and ended up putting me around the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
I fell into meat because my knees were wrapped too tight. I couldn't feel my feet. I had no idea.
Well, you just kind of start to think we're we're in an insane category of powerlifting where you just start to think things are normal. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, it's just the bench shirt cuts off the circulation in your hand turns black.
And that's a lot of
You're like,
why.
oh, it's just that's how it should fit. You're
Right.
like, what?
And honestly, that's a lot of why I got out of the gear. Is
It's too frustrating.
Work out.
Yeah.
And when you train in gear, you're not working out. I don't give a fuck what they're telling you. That shit is dial this in, put this sleeve on this way, put this crease at this way. No, I want to just put fucking 500 or 600 in my hands and bench the shit.
Right.
And I want to walk out in an hour. But when we were doing shirt training and all that gear training, you would squat. It would take you an hour and a half to 2.5 hours to fucking squat.
The only reason why I was good at it is because I didn't care how long it took.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, if you want to be good at gear lifting, you can't have a job because that's going to be your job.
That was it. That was everything to me. Was it could take? I could go through 3 or 4 different gyms, see me do it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, to the point where they're telling me to stop. They're like, look, dude, like it ain't gonna get any better. Like you're in your 3rd shirt for the day.
Yep.
It's like I need to figure this shit out. I want to fucking bench, 900 pounds.
And that was the big thing with my gear is the same shirt. So I was stuck around 680 bench in from
pathetic.
680 bench in a loose ass denim metal denim shirt. And I was stuck at 6.
So weird to think back and like you're lifting in a pair of jeans, like around your chest. Like,
but
it's so funny to look back now.
I'll tell you why that they don't use denim anymore. As some of it doesn't have the pop of the poly,
right?
But it lasts too fucking long.
Oh, that makes sense.
I have the same shirt sitting in my gym, and it still looks brand new. Now here's getting to my point. I was stuck at 670. I went up and did a class with Bill Crawford,
right?
And he
Metal
taught militia guy
guys
from New
great.
York.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to bench. And that same shirt that I was stuck at 680-ish for almost 2 years as a full meat lifter, I benched 785 in 8 months and then benched 815 in the same fucking shirt.
Shit.
Exactly the same. Did not change the seams, nothing. Point is that denim could still be used today to bench over 800.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So what equipment company makes any money doing that? Right?
Exactly.
So the denim, I think if you wore the denim perfectly, I think you would see some guys bench 900 in it. But I think the companies got smart and realized that poly wears out and you got to get a new one.
Well, I think about the denim though is that like it picks up a stank and then it never goes away, and that's why you end up having to replace it.
When I
One
stopped,
shirt from Ted, remember back in the day?
I do.
Just killed everybody.
It was so bad. Oh my god.
so when I stopped the shirt training to go raw, one of the last times I benched in a shirt was at the Elite FTS compound. It was me and Chuck, and you remember Jeremiah Myers?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
big puller. And I did 940.
That guy was explosive, I remember, on the deadlifts.
I did 940 to a half board at that point, and I was like this close to touching. And to realize how gangster those shirts are, I could not get 940 to touch.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go to a half an inch. If I was a half an inch thicker, and I tried to eat everything I could.
Yeah, for those people that are listening that just aren't understanding, like a bench shirt, powerlifting went on freeze, in my opinion, for a few years. During those years, it was really cool. There's a lot of fun things that happened, but I personally feel, even though I was a big bencher, I think the bench shirt ruined powerlifting for a little while. Squat suits were one thing, and deadlift, you couldn't figure out how to cheat enough on the deadlift to get anything out of it. But I do think the bench shirts kind of fuck things up for a while. But to put it into perspective, let's just say that you can bench 400 pounds raw. Well, if you got used to a bench shirt, it wouldn't be uncommon for you to be able to bench 550, maybe even 600. And we've seen even more extreme cases of it. So you could get 150, 200 pounds of your bench shirt. Very common, even amongst the best, Ryan Kennelly and so on. A lot of those guys started to handle 900 pounds.
I think that
1,000 pounds.
process that you saw changed in the mid-2000s, because when I first got into powerlifting in the early 90s, Inzer had a EPHD shirt or whatever,
Correct,
and you put that on and you could bench 500,
And
you were probably benching 500 raw. You could probably bench 530.
yeah,
That seems reasonable.
it was like a slingshot in a lot of ways, where it gave you maybe about 10%, and it took a few people to help you get it on.
Yeah.
And it really did alleviate stress and pain from like the elbows and shoulders and stuff. But also there was a price to pay when you put that bad boy on. That thing hurt.
It cut you to pieces, because the sewing was meant to make the fabric perform as well as possible with no conception of how it's going to fuck your skin up.
That's funny you should say that, because I remember back during this slingshot development process, you got some single ply shirts and cut them up and tried different things with them to try to get
the right consistency of material.
Right.
Yeah, and then what I found out was, and it's actually really interesting. I don't know why the manufacturers have. It actually doesn't really make any sense, but it does work. The stiffer the gear is, the better. You know, you think the best squat suit really they ever made was that Leviathan canvas suit. So you think about, you know.
Let me tell you the transition to that. So I just went to a meet, had some training partners I took to a meet, and everybody, I won't even let them get in knee sleeves. I'm like, if you train with me, you squat 800 raw, you earn the right to put knee sleeves on. So all these fuckers putting them on at 135, it just cracks me up. Here's my point, though.
How about you learn how to squat first?
This is how bad it got for a while. So I went to this meet, and this was just a couple of weeks ago, and one of the weakest guys had the most shit on. So there was this dude there, it was like 250 pounds.
Mummified.
He had a fucking new Leviathan on that has all those adjustable straps on the side.
Those are
Velcro
crazy,
or whatever. They look retarded, right? He's falling backwards with 600, and my guys are walking out with 700 in fucking singlets and a belt. At that point in time, when do you look around and go, maybe I shouldn't have all this shit on and just get stronger?
Yeah.
And that's where it's laughable to me. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just, to me, the gears.
Well, and I even sell, tons of powerlifting products, and I tell people all the time, you're not going to do all your workouts all the time in a slingshot.
No.
You have to develop some strength, and then also a slingshot as a protective device for as you get more into training. If you have a banged up shoulder or elbow, it can also help with your form. It can help you overload, but it's just another tool. It's just another weapon that you have.
Exactly right.
Same with like wrist wraps and stuff. If you don't feel like you really need to put them on, then don't worry about it too much.
Yeah.
But there is going to be some times where you're benching, squatting, deadlifting, you're doing the same patterns over and over again, and you're going to want to put something on just to protect yourself before you get fucked up.
I mean, I wear elbow sleeves probably 15-20% of the year. I wear knee sleeves 3 times before I do a lifting meet. Just to get the feel of them, just to make sure it's not going to screw with me too much, because I want that extra. Let's just say that the knee sleeves give you 20 pounds. I want that extra 20 pounds on the platform. I don't want it in the training. I want my muscles to do all the work, whether it's mental or physical. I want to feel like when I walk out on the stage and I have those tighter knee sleeves on, like I got a pair of super tight knee wraps on.
Right.
And it's
how
extra.
How do you teach your body to do that? Because I know that you spend a lot of time working on your actual muscles rather than just trying to stimulate your nervous system like many other powerlifters has. How do you get your body kind of in tune with some of these things you're trying to do?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is, your peaking phase is built in the off season. So right now, me and you are kind of doing things.
You guys hear that? Does that make sense? Your peaking phase is built in the off season. So basically, he's getting himself prepared for what you're about to do in the future, right?
So the point is that if you can't recover from a really hard squat workout, you can't do it. And people don't realize that. They think, well, I can do another set. Well, do you need to do another set, or is it actually going to help you?
Yeah.
And that's the battle that we fight. And, even as somebody at our age that's doing it for 20 years, you still only have your best guess. So do you need another set or do you not? I'm always on the other end of, I try to do everything at 90%. If I feel like a tank, I will try 92, 93. 100% is saved for the fucking meets, period. Because I find that if I keep that 5 to 7% or 8% or 10% in the tank, I'm never injured.
Right.
And that's one of the big keys with that. The other thing is that I'm so in tune with my body that putting something on me that has a little bit more pressure that maybe give me 20 pounds, I don't really notice is there other than mental. But I find that people actually in the weaker strength levels put things on that will actually help them too much, but then they wonder why when something doesn't fit right or things don't go right, they're not at peak performance. Well, I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure you know, if you're going to go to a meet and expect 100% all the time, you're probably going to have that, I would say, 4 times in 15 years, if you're lucky. I mean, how many meets have you had, Mark, where you walked in and everything went your way? Everything. 4?
I think it's only happened to me one time.
Okay, so let's say 4 is a really 4 if you know what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah.
So
I think you know, there's been some other times where I've had a good time on the platform and like things went my way pretty well, but I would say overall, just like I mean, it's in Bigger, Stronger, Faster. I made all 9 lifts, and like that was just kind of a magical day. Some of the goals that all the goals that I set out to do, and then some, kind of came together.
And you finished what, 7th that day or something like that?
Yeah, I got my ass kicked.
Yeah,
but that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, my point is if you know everything and how your body functions, you're lucky to have 4 major peaks in your whole life.
Yeah.
So the trick is that don't go to meets and expect to better yourself once you're already good. So the trick is, if I've been 6'11.8 or whatever the kilo conversion is, for me to get to 6'18 or 22 could be a 24-month process.
Right.
Not the next fucking meet.
Right.
So what I find is that I don't try to hold on to my peak. If I feel like I've hit a peak, I back off at least 10% more off of that and base my training on that 10% less.
So you just mentioned that you like to go to about 90%. Let's just, you know, so it gets less confusing. Let's even just knock the 0 off there and say on a scale of 1 to 10, you're going like a 9.
Yeah.
You're not going until your eyes are busting out of your head, and you're also a 9 for you. Probably, in my opinion, probably sounds like you're between like an 8 or a 9, and you're going to a level where if you put a little bit more weight on, there's a possibility the form gets compromised, right?
Yeah.
The form's probably always intact.
Yeah, at my level, the form never tries to break. And then if I never reinforce bad form over 5 to 10 years, I can't ever make bad form.
Right.
It only knows one direction.
So it's probably to the point where your training partners are just kind of looking at each other like, why doesn't he go up?
Yep.
Because they would want to go up.
But if you talk to my training partners, they know.
Yeah.
Because every time they go to the meet, they do way better. I actually have a guy, Big Rob. I think you've met him once. His second meet, now this guy came from testicular cancer, had right out of college, and he came to me 34% body fat, and could barely bench 185. Second competition, benches 562. So I got him close to where I'm at in 2 fucking meets that took me 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, is he bigger than me? Yes, but my point is that as soon as I seen him hit 90%, instead of the old days where I would say, do another set, I backed him off and saved it. And I'm watching him grow because you're putting the optimal amount of water on the plant. You're not overwatering or underwatering. You're optimally watering. And I think 90% is always a trick. But where I first heard that when I was a kid was I went to a big meet over in the Ohio range close to the Indiana border, and I ran into Larry Pacifico. And I asked him, Wade, what's some tricks of having longevity in the sport? And he said 9 out of 10. So he always saved shit in the tank too until he had to beat somebody at a meet. And that's why he won 9 or 10 titles.
Right.
But my point is like you have to understand that it's not what you can do, it's what you can recover from.
It makes a lot of sense if you apply it to other sports. You know, Tom Brady, when he's practicing, when he's in training camp, yes, he's going hard. You know, of course, he's practicing with everything he's got, basically, in a lot of ways. But they run drills where they're going 70%, 80%. And the point of them doing drills is that they're not actually playing a game of football.
Yep.
Because if they played the game of football, they'd fuck themselves up. And if they went 100%, they wouldn't be good for the game.
Yeah, the only time you see the NFL go 100% is when they're making the team. When you watch Hard Knocks,
of course.
And that first time when they get all the draft kids in and they get all the people that they think they want on the team to say, you know, they narrow the roster down, but they start at like 130, 50 guys, and then they narrow it down. The point is that that's when they test, but you notice they don't ever play their star players like that. They save them. And I think that's what you have to have once you build a certain level of strength like you and I have, or even in the moderate levels, you have to start understanding that the longer you train, the stronger you're going to get. And if you got to keep backing off because you're injured all the time, you know, it's like I was telling you earlier. If I'm doing a meet and I walk into that meet and I don't feel right, I don't force it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So if
That's hard.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is.
It's the advantage of having another gear to go to. I mean, if you know you're maxed out all the time, like, and especially in a competitive situation, we're like, well, I've never done that before, and I am always trying to do that, and I know I can't make it. So, like, what does that do to your confidence? If you haven't maxed it out, it's maybe possible. I mean,
the real trick starts, in my opinion, with training is when you start hitting your genetic ceiling window. The guys that get better from there know their shit, and the guys that don't fade away very fast.
You also you don't have that long. Like, you think the process would take a lot longer.
Yeah.
But really, it from what I've seen from a lot of people, especially now there's more information out there and stuff, you're looking at like it's like in a 6 to 8 year window,
Yep.
you know, and then some people can stretch that longer with some PEDs if they haven't done them before. But other than that, that's kind of that window. You know, you start at 16. By the time you're 26, 30, somewhere in that range,
Yep.
you're probably firing on all cylinders. You're about as big as you're going to get. You know, like I see you come up and down and you get leaner and you get stronger and you make these changes, but it's not like you walked in here 320 and ripped. Like it's not some crazy change because you can only make so much change.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think what I try to do and what's I think saved me a lot is I look at my training like an athlete and then I peak it to being a power lifter.
Yeah.
So in that athletic range, I'm not worried about holding that 611 bench. I'll drop it to 550 and base my stuff off of 550, 90%, 560. And those are the percentages I base my speed work off of and everything like that. When I peak, then the bench is back to 622, 30 in that range.
Right.
So the point is you can't maintain your maximum strength all the time. You have to be willing to only go 90%.
And because of that, there's no reason to even try.
No, exactly.
Right? Like, I mean, if you try, you're going to get hurt.
Right.
If you're trying to just max all the time, you're going to get fucked up.
And eventually, depending on your structure and your age, there's certain weights that they go wrong a half an inch, they're going to fuck you up and you're done. So for me, it's staying in the game as long as I can until I have that shining day. And I'm not saying that when I walk in, I expect that shining day to happen, but you can feel it. Like I was telling you, I can feel it in warm-ups if the day is worth the gamble. Because at this point, it's a gamble. I could quit right now and be one of the better guys in my generation with the most longevity, but I still have goals in my mind from when it was 20 years ago going, I want to be, you know, one of those guys, it's like a Don Reinhold or whatever, that's hit that huge numbers with no shit on.
Yeah.
You know, that way the old timers and what's left of them can go, that motherfucker is strong either way. I don't care what.
You know, Jerry Seinfeld basically said something along the same lines where he's just like, you know, I think maybe he heard it from another comedian. I can't remember exactly who it was, but the guy basically told him, like, you're in the same breath as George Carlin, as Robin Williams, and like Jerry Seinfeld said, he just like almost started bawling right there on the spot because like that's kind of all he ever wanted. You know, it's like, just mention me one time in with like some of those fucking classic.
And you know
people,
what I mean?
You know?
The problem is nobody can be the best forever. I mean, even
well, it's debatable, right?
And
like
it's
Ed
debatable.
Cohn, like we all love Ed Cohn, so we're gonna, you know, gonna yell at anybody that says anything different than Ed Cohn.
Yeah.
But it's highly debatable.
Yeah,
You can
there's
throw
people
anybody
like
in there.
John Cook and
Andre
Pacifico
Milanichev.
and
He's got the biggest number of all time,
Yeah.
and you can't really debate that. And just
And then you got the new guy, the big dude from Mississippi that just squatted 1050 in sleeves.
Jesus, I know.
I mean,
I don't know
he
what's
is
going on.
debatably one of the best now. He might even be surpassing Milanichev, in my opinion. The only reason I say that is because I watched his deadlift go from 730-40 last year to 850, and we all know that is insanely hard.
Oh, you're talking about Ray.
Ray Williams. In my opinion, right now, as far as, you know, he's 30 years old or whatever, he's doing things that are beyond what anybody thought was achievable.
He doesn't even really try to push the bench because he just says it's not there for him, and his shoulders tweaked here and there, and so he just goes and benches what he needs to bench.
Yeah,
and he
you can't have it all. You know, can't have it all. It's hard to have it all.
This is going to be way out in time, but Fred Hatfield just died. That way.
Yeah.
Sad. You know, to me, I think Louis gets a lot of credit for trying to bring education to powerlifting, but Fred Hatfield was before him.
Yeah.
And Fred Hatfield, in my opinion, had some ideas that were even, I would say, beyond Louis' stuff. I mean, you look at compensatory acceleration. He understood that to move heavy weights, you had to do it quickly. So if you really want to talk dynamics and training, you really need to put Fred Hatfield's name in there and speed. But yeah, 10-14 squat at 242 back in those days, that is fucking gnarly. But
Fred Hatfield was an absolute savage, and the compensatory acceleration. I mean, the idea of like, you know, basically, I have not read tons of it, and it's been a long time before I don't dive into that shit that much anymore because I don't really care. but it did have a huge impact on strength training. And basically, he was just saying, like, you know, once you get the form and technique down, just to put everything you got into it, try to apply as much force to the bar as you can.
Yeah.
And then he's also the same guy, which I think this is really important because a lot of times we get excited about the methods and techniques that we find. And so that's our like battle cry, like, oh, you got to wear a slingshot all the time, or you're trying to sell something all the time. And he didn't do that. He said, you know, speed work's important. But he said if everybody could lift light, everybody would be strong.
Yep.
And he said you need both.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought that was a great point.
Yeah.
And so even though you would get into a workout where you might be doing multiple sets, multiple reps, something rigorous like 8 sets of 3 or something, he would say, you don't want the bar to slow down. You're trying to still put as much force into it
and that's
as
so
you
easy
can.
to do now with the accelerometers and the way we have to measure bar speed. You could actually check it. So when people see my bar speed, they're like, why doesn't he put more weight on the bar? Well, reverse around. Why don't you bench 600? So it's like people don't put 2 and 2 together. But,
They're also not seeing it live.
Yeah.
Usually, when you see things on video, the perception is different.
Yeah.
Things seem faster on
Well,
video.
you're going to want different stimulus in different ways. There's going to be times where you want to really smash into those. You want to do 3 reps in maybe like a second or half a second or whatever it equals out to be with 185 and some bands and chains. There's going to be other times where you want the bar weight to be 275 and maybe there's only a tiny bit of chain.
And some training tips, so I waive that. So what I waive it with accommodating resistance bands or more chain. So what I do is week 1, I try to stay at 1.2 meters per second. Then I go to 1.1, and then I go to 1. And I do that by adding either more chain or a little bit more band. It's still, to the eye, can't see much difference.
Right.
But I've measured it, and I figured out that's how I can accommodate the speed training and make it work better because I'm actually rotating my speeds with a little bit more chain or band to slow the bar down. But the problem is if I stay at that 1 meter per second, which is a certain amount of chain or band, I'll overtrain. So I go up to almost not speed work anymore and then back it off and go lighter again. So I just toy with it every 3 weeks instead of trying to maintain that.
And you also have an eye for coaching. You've been coaching people for a long time. So even without measuring stuff, which is great because you have an actual tool that can measure it, you can just watch someone's form and be like, that's too heavy.
Well, I did a seminar in Colorado Springs, and Charles Poliquin asked to come and, you met him, and to come and to listen to me talk. And at that time, I didn't know that he was interested in doing seminars with me. Yeah. But he had heard through a lot of guys around town in the industry that, I might be a good, good tool for him. But anyway, he comes in to watch my speed bench, and I said, I can move 185 with a double red and 3 chain, which is 430 at the top,
right?
And I can move that over 1 meter per second. And he said, "Oh, you're full of shit." The only guy I've ever even heard of that can do that much weight that fast is Adam Nelson, that badass thrower. Yeah. And I said, "Well, fucking put it on there and let's get the accelerometer out." So he did.
Adam Nelson's a freak.
He did, and we measured it, and it was 1.12. And I didn't measure it beforehand, and I knew those bands were brand new out of the box. Yeah, but I had an idea it was over 1 meter per second because I watched it all the time. And the machine, it was faster than that.
Right.
So actually, somebody asked a question about that. Gabe.b._, which is, that's a lot of extra characters. Anyway,
people have the worst names.
They do. When should people use speed work in training?
Well, I mean, it's got to be a weekly process. So if you look at your training as a pie chart, 33% of your focusing. Pie. Fuck, you got me all off kilter now. Thinking about fucking carbs.
About food.
You can tell we're dieting. But 33% of your training should be based in the repetition effort method. This is your energy expenditure. But 33% of it should be based in your repetition work, 33% of it in your max effort or ability to strain, and 33% in your ability to develop acceleration and to increase force there. So 33% of your vision in the week should be to get faster. And that's something that I found that's worked for me. But what I do in the off season is I increase the part of that pie where I feel like I need more work. So right now I have maxed my ability to do speed work. I have maxed my ability. I don't need to learn to strain. I can fucking strain. But what I've learned is that now reps tend to be more of my friend because I need more muscle mass in order to lift those bigger weights. But not weight, not body weight. I need to be able to weigh more with less body fat.
Yeah. Your muscles are really fucking dense, We'll get back to this question in a second, but the only other person I've ever had in this gym that has like sexy legs the way you have sexy legs is the Olympic gold medalist champion in weightlifting, the Ukrainian guy. I forget his last name, but it's like
Klokov?
No, it's not Klokoff's fucking jacked too. But this is like Taransky or TOR something or other. Anyway, he's a fucking savage. But he looks like a professional athlete. And that was my comment to you, is that you have that look as well, where you look like a professional something. You know, somebody look at you and be like, I don't know, maybe he's pro wrestler, maybe he's rugby or whatever.
I get more of that as I've learned to clean up my diet and eat better.
Right.
Because it makes me look more athletic. Do I feel like I was stronger when I was a more unhealthy 305? In spurts.
Yeah.
But right now, in general, if me and you say, hey, Matt, I benched with Mike O'Hearn yesterday, and the dude's a fucking animal.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're going to bench after this, I can do that. It's not going to kick my ass. And I did 405 for 5 sets of 5.
When you were doing the geared powerlifting years ago, you'd probably be like, I'm not benching. I
would have done a lift, and I would have done a couple burnout sets, and then focused a couple sets on my weaknesses and been fucking trashed for 3 days.
Yeah.
Now, you asked me to do upper body after doing upper body yesterday. I can do it.
Yeah, and I trained chest yesterday and then just ran through it and trained it again today.
Right, but what takes that, what the ability of that is being fucking athletic. You have to be an athlete first, powerlifter second. I try to tell people that all the time. If you have weaknesses and you don't have
actually a really good point, and
posture.
maybe some people have not participated in a lot of athletics, so you can use your training sessions to become more athletic over a period where, like, I don't know, you probably played football and did a bunch, right? So it's already there, and it's like you're just trying not to lose it or regain it, regain some of it. Yeah. And I feel that a lot of people could learn a lot from a lot of that stuff.
Well, if you go back to the better powerlifters, and like I said, there's always outliers, but Kazmaier, great football player.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ken Patera.
Great
weightlifter. He could throw a fucking hammer. He could throw a discus. He could throw a fucking shot put.
Adam Nelson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fucking guy's a beast. He's one of the biggest savages out there. We got to have him on the podcast sometime.
You got Ben Johnson, 600 plus squatter at 200 body weight sprinter. Yeah. I mean, the point is that you take an athlete, you bring Bo Jackson in his prime, and he comes and works out with us, I'll guarantee you he can hang.
Oh, my God.
And the shit that he's never even done, because he never even really probably lifted weights, I think is what I read in his thing. Yeah. But the point is that he's just a fucking athletic.
Bo Jackson in his prime's not missing a 500-pound deadlift.
No, he's going to pull it. He's probably double overhand easily.
And be like, oh, is that the way you guys do it? And be like, whoops.
This isn't that fun. Let's go eat and hang out. But the point is that you have to be an athlete first. And I think with that philosophy, mixing a conjugate style system, but having the philosophy of being athletic, which I think is where separates me from Louis, is where I not only look it, I do it, and I'm healthy.
Right.
So
I know that Lou always preached it, but he didn't always do it, and he didn't always have a lot of his guys do it. He tried to share that with some of the guys, kind of drag the sled. But this is really, it comes down to it, eating at buffets and shit all day and trying to drag a sled, it just doesn't equal out to really turn into anything.
No matter if you have a shitty diet, you can't burn that off working out. And I think people screw that up. You have to eat clean. You have to put on quality muscle, because in the end, the guys that can stay the healthiest and keep their blood work clean, and this is a lot of what I've learned from Charles and Dr. Serrano, is you have to be healthy and athletic first. Let the strength come over time, because if your only focus is strength, eventually that shit's going to come back around and bite you in the ass.
Well, and what is, what are we doing? We're going to the gym and fucking exercising. It's a stress. Yeah. And then there's just life stress in general.
Right.
Yeah. And it's all going to accumulate to something, and it's not going to accumulate to something good. It's going to be pretty negative. So your body has to be able to ward off all the shit that's happening.
Well, and like me, for example, I just never wanted to be the guy that walked into, like, say, a Lifetime, or I don't go to the mall, but because there's nothing fits me, but the point, except for fucking shoes. I don't know why everybody has a size 13 shoe, right? But then you go in and ask for a 3X shirt and look like you're fucking retarded. 3X? Yeah, there's 13 shoes over there. So you know what I mean?
They don't have anything that
without getting off the track, I didn't want to walk into a public place where somebody looked at me and goes, that dude's a world champion. He looks like a fucking professional eater. I never wanted to be that dude. I always wanted to at least look like I fucking lifted weights, and that's, I think, saved me a lot, because it's kept me a little bit more in tune with my diet, and I'm learning more as I've cut down about 3 times now, and last year I had to get down to 262 to get to 13%. Right now I'm 13.6%, and I'm 286.
Nice.
From the same guy, same measurements, so point is like I'm learning how to cut my body fat down, not just my weight. Yeah. And that's helped me out tremendously.
Well, because I tell people this story pretty often. One of probably the biggest powerlifter I ever met and it's funny because he's not big in stature, was Sean Frankel in his prime.
Oh, fuck yeah.
yeah.
Dense as shit.
The guy was wider than this fucking table. His shoulders were like, I remember like, hearing about him and communicating with him a little bit, a bunch, and I kind of felt like I got to know him before I ever met him. And then I was at a meet that he was in, and I just remember looking at him, and I was like, that guy's fucking massive.
Yep.
When you looked at that back, okay, that's why you can bench.
And the shoulders and shit. And I didn't know who it was because I haven't actually physically met him in person. And so I was like, that guy's fucking huge.
You're the same person. I had the same.
I got
thought
up closer,
pattern.
and it was Sean Frankel. And I was like, what? And Sean Frankel, just for those who don't know, he was one of the most dominant powerlifters of all time.
At least 10 world records.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then 198, 220.
Crushing the fuck out of everybody. He chewed people up and spit them out at every fucking meet. Every time there was cash on the line,
Yeah.
he was guaranteed
absolutely.
victory. He fucking killed everybody.
And when he was in the
amazing.
shirts, I remember everybody talking trash because the shirts were getting really good at that time.
Remember, he'd smoke 500 in the warm-up room. Like it was nothing.
He did 550 raw in front of my eyes, and it was like at like
He's still
210 body weight and fucking killed it. And I was like, holy shit.
he still is crushing weight.
Yeah,
he
he's
does
huge.
some bodybuilding
But you know
and stuff.
based off of that same thought process, the first person I saw, I had one of my old coaches. He was really big into keeping up with all the guys that were really strong in the early 90s. The first person I saw like that blew me away was Joe Ladnier.
Oh yeah, Joe was
Holy
jacked.
fuck! When I saw
Bodybuilding
him,
too? Yeah.
when I saw him in 93 or 94, maybe he was still pretty much in his prime. I was
dude,
like,
too.
great guy, but holy shit, talk about jacked.
Yeah, and he benched some crazy weights, shirted and raw and everything else.
Oh,
and I
he's
think
just an all-around badass.
I think he's still lifting.
He
But
still looks good.
with Sean Frankel, it really put it in perspective to me. It was Sean Frankel and Sam Bird as well.
Sam Bird, yep.
Kind of looking at those guys. Those are lighter weight class guys, 220 and stuff like that. And when I looked at them, I was like, and at the time I was like 330.
Yeah.
So I was like, now I'm understanding the game better. When I get a better perspective of these guys are on top. These are the best this sport pretty much has to offer. They weigh 220. Their overall body mass is probably like the actual muscle mass they have on their body is probably 190.
Yeah, they're like 10%.
And if you break me down to strip all this body fat off of me, I probably don't have much more muscle mass than they do. So I was like, I got some fucking work to do.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, back then, those guys would bench in their shirts, and at meets, they would still be in their shirts, and they'd be lifting off for each other.
Oh, yeah.
Most everybody else was sitting over in the corner, sucking oxygen or whatever, trying to get through the meet. And they were on top of it. They were there for
machines.
each other.
Rick Husey had
to
them dialed
reiterate
in.
our points here, you're talking about dudes that had lengthy careers.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys
Sean's still lifting. He bodybuilds.
Yeah, the
and
guys
stuff.
are still that were sloppy and maybe strong for a short minute, then they're gone.
Yeah, Jim Grandick looks good right now. He's
Grandick,
doing
yeah.
a bodybuilding show coming
He's
up
a
here.
fucking hell of an athlete too.
Yeah.
He's always been insanely strong. So basically, just to kind of, I know we went off on a tangent with this guy's question, but you're saying like 33%. So I mean, for those people that don't like to use a lot of math like myself, basically, if you're not currently utilizing some speed training, start to insert some speed training. What are some speed training protocols you use for your training?
Well, the first thing is lighter is better, not heavier. So if you can think that, you're about 75% ahead of everybody else.
Right.
So for me to bench, 6'11", I use 185 pounds on the bar.
Right.
Okay. So
Now that also comes with a level of expertise, though, because somebody that benches 300, it'd be hard for them to progress with 400 with a similar percentage because you taught your body to press into those weights in an insane
actually
fashion.
create force.
You can create
So
tons
what
of
I've
force.
learned is that when I benched 585, 590 raw, I was using 225 weight. Now I bench 611, use 185. Why is that going backwards?
That's a good question.
Force production.
Because what I've learned is Louis' old thought pattern was 0.7 meters per second. I learned that over 1 meter per second worked well for me. Now, am I saying that 0.7 wouldn't work well for some people? No. But what I'm saying is that I had to have the force equation more separated because what I learned was if I dropped it down to 185 on speed work, it accessorized my max day. It made my max day fresher and stronger. So the point is like as a powerlifter, you want your max day to be your shining day. Speed is only a way to get stronger, but it doesn't trump strength. So the point is that if it felt like it helped my max day, then I stayed that way because the most important day was heavy day because I'm a fucking powerlifter.
So one of the benefits of max effort training is that it's max effort training.
Yeah,
One of the benefits of speed training is that it's fucking fast and not heavy.
The body's general adaptation, or however you want to look at it, is we're not built to strain. You have to learn to strain. I've only met a few people that can grab something and fucking go 100 miles an hour.
We just had a guy today. We were going through a workout. We got a certain weight on the bar, and he went to press into it, and his body just wasn't ready for it. And we racked the weight, and I kind of like was almost laughing because I'm like, that's gonna be a joke for you in like 3 weeks. You're gonna be pushing that for like 3 reps, and it's not really just stronger. It's more adaptation. Obviously, it is stronger, but
a lot of that
body
is
needs to get used to straining.
The spinal cord. In the central nervous system, if you were to take that kid and hook car batteries to all of his muscles or whatever you want to do and electrocute his ass.
No, I want to use the fucking, what are those things called? Like where you rub them together.
Oh,
it's like clear,
paddles,
boom, like right when someone's paws at the bottom. I always wanted to do that.
Yeah, we could try
We
it.
got to do that here.
So the point is,
clear, boom.
If you were to make him a machine and turn off his brain and hook his spinal cord into a computer and just make his muscles go 100%, he'd probably bench 100 pounds more right now. What shuts most people down is the ability to coordinate all those motor units and strain. So the point is you have to teach it over and over and over again. So I find that people that do like a linear periodization training model, they never learn how to strain 1RM. I've seen lots of guys that could bench, say, 405 for 5, but you take them up to 455, they can't do 1. Why the fuck is that? It's only 50 more pounds.
Right.
The point is that 5 RMs don't necessarily teach you how to strain. So people that have to go to 1 RMs, they can't innervate
Whenever
those
I see
fibers.
anybody being able to do reps, I'm like, I could do like 100 more pounds if I could do something for,
But
3 to 5 reps.
It doesn't translate that way.
Question though, when you're using that low a percentage on speed work, how do you keep it from being all over the place? Because
Well, that's the trick. So with speed work is proficiency and form under high velocity. So let's go over and
You
all
guys
that.
I hope people have a fucking pen with you.
no shit.
Take some notes.
You have to ask these questions. What are ways that we can make something harder in the gym? Let's go basic. 1, what is it?
Go heavier.
We can
do
go
more
heavier.
reps. Do more sets.
So heavier, okay. We can make you reps and sets for fatigue. We can make you tired. What's another way? We can make it unstable.
Right.
We can add tempo.
We can make it faster.
Right.
If I tell you to do something perfect faster, it's harder.
Or
right?
slower.
So if I let's take a gun, for example. If I give you a 9mm and we go to the gun range and I say, okay, I want you to hold the gun for 10 seconds, get it right where you want it, and then I want you to shoot it. You're probably better off than pulling it out of your pocket and boom.
Right.
But if you get as good as holding it for 10 seconds right here as you can drawing it and firing, that's a skill.
Yeah.
So the point is that you have to learn to increase your skill with a lighter weight and make it look just as perfect ultra fast. That's how you do it.
What about going slower?
Going slower can be hard because that's a fatigue set.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's good, but
So
the
that's
problem
tapping
is,
in a little, maybe more into your muscular system.
under heavy weights, most natural instinct is to slow down. That's the wrong instinct. If you talk, we just talked about Fred Hatfield.
Right.
The trick is to maintain proper speed even under heavier loads, but the body tends to turn it on. That's why it's important to strain constantly, because you learn to have a better timing with heavier shit, and you learn to quit thinking about how heavy it feels in your hands and do what you tell your muscles to do.
Do you do this on occasion? I've always liked to, when I did speed work, I always liked to just work up in weight, and I wouldn't work up to anything heavy. Let's say I was doing a box squat, and say the weight was 405 and some chains for the day.
Okay.
Moving around pretty fast, moving within the parameters of some speed work.
Yep.
And I just wanted to take like another set or two, kind of just to feel what you're talking about. So I might jump like a quarter on that last set just to take a single, and then might jump like another dime on the last one. And they're all very easy. They're all very fast. Maybe I switched from sets of 3 to singles. Is that something you play with at all? Or?
Well, something similar, but I do it in the same set. So let's say I'm going to do speed triples. So you'll notice I'm a big fan of doing what I call like a wave set. Mm-hmm. So I'll stand up with, say, 400 and blast it, right?
Right.
In the same set, standing there, I'll have my spotters load another another 50 pounds on the bar and do it the exact same fucking speed. My thought pattern behind that is, can I maintain velocity when I'm already fatigued?
Right.
The answer is yes when you're stronger. So what I find is they have to be built into the same set. I think it does better. It teaches you how to be just as explosive under fatigue, because if you go up 50 more pounds but you give your body a minute, 2 minutes rest, you're not really...
Yeah, of course you're going to be able to smash it.
Right, of course. You've
It's
redeveloped that.
not as challenging. Maybe.
So that's
Gotcha.
Yes, I do believe that that's the case. But back to your point is, are you proficient with when it's high velocity? Because it's easy to control something slower.
Yeah.
But you increase speed, so people ask, well, why are you all over the place? Well, that means you're unskilled, and you're going to be all over the place with heavyweights.
Well, and I think back in the day, a lot of the time we ended up having to increase weights for people because they were so sloppy fast.
Yeah, because they slowed it down.
Yeah.
Right. No, I remember that was a thing with Lou. He was like, "You're not moving fast anyway. Add weight."
Yeah.
You know, and they would move a similar speed, and it wasn't like we put another 45 on.
Yeah.
We put a 10 on. You know what I mean? Just to kind of just to give them more control, because they were lifting like shit, basically.
Well, yeah, that. I think the thought pattern is different. I think if you look at Louis' demeanor and thought pattern on those things, is Louis is trying to create the professional powerlifter as close as he can in his gym, which means the average age of the NFL is 2 years on the shelf.
Yeah.
The point is that Louis is not really there to make you long-term healthy or strong in 10 years. He wants to see how strong you can get.
Results now.
He wants results now. Yeah. So you have to ask yourself, how long do you want to be in this game? Is it a lifelong process like me and Mark and you? Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then sometimes training has to be modified for those reasons. And I find that having things accentuate my max day versus be too close to my max day tends to lead me to overtrain, and then also makes my max effort work suffer 3 days later.
Just staying on the topic of the speed work, you mentioned that the main goal is to be fast.
Yes.
You want to see good speed. You mentioned it probably equates out to be like 30% of your max, that 185 versus 600.
I'm in the 30 to 40% range.
Okay, yeah. So it ends up being in there. Some of the people that are listening, and my advice to people, and you can give me your thoughts, has always just been just to use half, because that's a nice starting point. You can go up and down in weight. Mm-hmm. It's really easy math. If you bench 300 on your speed day, I want to use 150. Now we got chains and bands, and we can add other things, and we can manipulate those weights. But I always kind of thought that was a decent kind of starting point. What is your starting percentage for just kind of your average lifter, not somebody who's like
that's why I do a lot of like online like consults, and I have people send me their video, and I said, let me see 50%.
Right.
And if I know they can't move 50% that fast, or it looks sloppy, then I know that we have some work to do. But I think traditionally for speed work, you have to invest in bands and chains, because the bar acceleration is so quick when you get better, or even moderately better, that you're not getting a lot of work. You get the most work in speed work.
So just elaborate on it a little bit further about the bands and chains. What are they doing exactly?
So they're slowing the bar down, but what they're doing is creating more tension as the weights move, so the muscles have to work more. All right, so I always looked at it like if you got a car going down the freeway, the engine's going to have to work a lot harder if you start applying the brake to maintain the same speed. So the problem with free weight speed training is you're only really getting work in the bottom. That's the problem with free weights in general, is that really the point in which you get the most work is where it changes direction. So at the bottom of a squat and the bottom of a bench. That's why you notice that I would say 80-90% of traditional lifters, where do they miss lifting? They miss the lift in the middle. Why? Because they've gotten all the work in the bottom. So they might be a 225-pound bencher in the bottom, right? But they're only a 185-pound bencher in the middle because they didn't get any work there. That's why you need bands and chains.
The way I always kind of looked at it too was like, if you were to throw a shot put, a baseball, and a wiffle ball, actually the wiffle ball would probably hurt the worst to throw the hardest, right? Because it just doesn't have like enough weight associated with it. A shot put would be too heavy to really get any distance on it, and the baseball would be perfect, right?
Yep.
And when you have bands and chains on the bar, I think it provides a optimal environment to apply the right amount of force.
Yeah. If you look at all those different viewpoints or weight selections that you have, the most work you're getting is right when you get ready to throw it. It's like right when you get ready to transition the other way. By the time the throw is halfway done, the amount of force output you're doing is less. And that's why if you had a band or a chain hooked onto it, where it's progressively getting heavier, you're having to get more work in.
Yeah, if you take a really light weight, like you got 135 pounds in the bar, if you just give it all you got from the bottom, you can just coast straight towards the top. Now, when you have bands and chains on there, that's not the case anymore.
Yes, exactly. There's no coasting with bands and chains in optimal range.
Again, it's accommodating resistance. The weights are heavier at the top. They're lighter at the bottom. I don't know how many times I've said that on...
A million times.
Yeah, we've explained it on every video that we've ever done. And where you're in the least advantageous position, where you're in the worst position, that's where the chains and bands tend to unload the most. And they hop back on the bar as you get into more advantageous positions, such as going towards a lockout.
So I'm actually creating, because I get the same questions I'm sure you guys get all the time on that stuff, I'm creating a quick reference manual that shows you not only what the bands and chains do, but how to set them up based on your strength range.
Oh, nice.
So that way it takes the guesswork out of it, and it shows you
There's a lot of ways to set them up.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to set them up, and probably 75% of the time I get on the internet, there's 75% of the time they're set up fucking wrong.
Right.
So that's something I would like to alleviate, because just because you use chains, if you don't have it hooked up right, they're not functioning correctly.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and sometimes it's a little easier to utilize than you might think. Hooking some bands to the bar is not that huge of a, it's not that big of a problem. If you're training in a commercial gym, you should first of all get out of there. But
that's actually a question that came up.
Yeah,
here. Like,
you should get out of there. Now, the other thing is too is you don't necessarily, especially if you're just getting started, you don't necessarily need bands or chains right away. They would be great to incorporate, because as we're mentioning, they can make things a little bit more optimal. But there are a lot of other ways to train.
Well, and the other thing too is there's 20,000 companies now that make resistance bands for training. Back when we first started playing with them, there was jump stretch, and it was $400 for a set. Yeah. Now you can buy a set for $10 for the Reds and $25. I mean, they're cheap.
And they wear out faster too. But
they wear out faster. But the point is that when somebody says I don't have bands, the first thing is I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, that means you don't want to invest $100
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would say 15% of everything I've ever made has been dumped into fucking working out. So point is like chains and bands are not unattainable anymore, and they're not that expensive. So, the problem is that we all built our own gyms because we knew what we needed to get better. Right. And eventually, if you're in a town that doesn't have the right shit, you're going to have to make it.
Right.
So that's how I look at it. I think that's just a cop-out for people thinking that they can just go work out hard and it's going to get better. Well, if that was true, there'd be a lot more guys that were us.
Right.
But the reason they're not is because they don't put themselves in positions to grow.
When it comes to speed training, what kind of set and rep protocol are you usually looking into
what
for
I do
bench,
is,
squat, deadlift?
I usually do deadlift's always set up with how much energy I have left, and that's probably why it's been the one lift that I've had. I pulled 800. A little over 800, but it's always a lift that suffers.
I remember one of the greatest quotes I ever heard. Ed Cohn called me the day that he deadlifted 800 pounds, and he's like, "I can die now." And I was like, "What happened? Like, what happened? That's so great." He's like, "Fucking Matt Wenning deadlifted 800 pounds."
Yeah. So I always bust his balls back and say, "I've benched over 600 4 times. Where are you at? Greatest of all time." I said, to be greatest of all time, I think you got to be able to bench over 600. But
it's he did do a 585.
Yeah,
220 or something. In training or whatever it was.
He got me.
He's crazy.
But yeah, the point is like you have to put yourself in a position to get better, and you have to build a gym sometimes that is just not normal. I mean, I would have never gotten where I was if I would have stayed in my hometown and trained at a local YMCA. And that's the thing is that if you really want to be good at this stuff, you have to go places. I mean, I had to move away from home, and all of that thing it led to where I am now. So I think one of the biggest things I think that keeps people from growing is being scared to change.
Yeah, not wanting to get out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, I never had a problem with that, and I think that's what's got me so many places. I never had a problem going sitting in a fire department and talking to a chief and telling him I could change things. I never had a problem, meeting Arnold yesterday. Mm-hmm. The guys at the front desk, I was sitting around for 30 minutes waiting after Mike O'Hearn and me and him got done training, and they're like, "Oh man, are you nervous to meet him?" I'm like, "No, I'm okay." Yeah. You know what I mean? I think this is one of those things where I think people miss so much in life just because they're scared to get better or to talk to people or any of those things, and I think it's one of my big advantages over most people.
I think Yeah, people are scared of change. They're scared of things that they maybe haven't done before. They're scared of things they're not informed about. They're scared of the future, and they're scared of what's going to happen when they make this shift. If they quit their job and try to follow something different, or if they do these different things. And those are all very normal things to be scared of. But what I always tell people is there's absolutely nothing worse than staying the same.
No,
so you want to stay the same, and go ahead.
Another great quote that Charles has said to me a couple of times is that you are the sum of the 5 people that you're closest to you and you hang out with.
Yeah.
So right now, I would say,
can't hang out with you guys anymore.
But right now, I would say my
here.
closest guys in this realm.
Yeah.
I talk to Stan probably every week. Dude's
The Rhino.
very
That's
smart.
our boy.
He's very business savvy. He trains his ass off. We talk constantly.
I hate him.
The point is, why is it all the guys that we hang out with are all successful?
Yeah.
That's not by default.
Right.
Yeah.
There's something.
Well, and then Ed Cohn is just like the
And Eddie,
greatest
yeah.
person, period.
Yeah.
Like he's fucking awesome.
Yeah, he'd give you the shirt
Checks
off your
in.
back if you needed it. Yeah.
Checks in with you, texts you, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Things going well?
Yeah, I mean, he actually
Just
texted me
wanna
when he
say
saw
I
that
love you.
picture
He'll
of me
send
and
you, like-
Arnold.
yeah.
He goes, "Hey, did he ask about me?" I'm like, yeah. He says, "I want half Eddie." Remember that off of Eddie Murphy?
You should have asked him. You should have asked him if he's got that $40 that he owes Tom File. One of the guys here used to work the front desk. He's like, I lent Arnold $40 in like 1992. He's like, he's got to give that shit back to me.
Oh,
The
man.
interest on that. Hello. Tell me if I ever run into him, I got to bring it up. So.
I just kind of let him just, guide the conversation because it was one of those things where I'm
Did he
sure.
pump you up? Did he talk about Big Yar or something?
Yeah, he's like, look at your forearms and your calves,
Yeah.
But it was pretty funny because
That's a big deal coming from him,
Well, yeah, I think like all of us, that's the guy that, for me, that was probably half of the reason I wanted to come out here and do this bike trip is because, whatever small way it is, I think I told him, I was like, you're one of the guys that made me want to get into lifting. Mm-hmm. And, the front desk guys told him that I work with special forces dudes and stuff. So he was automatically kind of already interested because the picture I posted, he took it. He's like, give me your phone. I'll take the picture, And I'm like, this is awesome, man. Because I didn't ask him for a picture. I try not to be a fanboy and be like real with him.
Yeah.
The only thing cooler than that would have been to try to work out with him, But I wasn't going to push my luck. So. But
who knows? He might have kicked your ass if
he might have. If we were doing biceps, he'd have definitely kicked my ass.
Arnold just doesn't even. It just doesn't even make any sense. Like what he's done is just. It's completely on another level. It like I said, it doesn't make any sense. When you try to add it up at the end of the day, it's hard to even equate to anything.
Yeah.
His accent was against him. His very name was against him. His heritage was against him.
Yep.
Him talking about bodybuilding was weird because bodybuilding wasn't even popular. He kind of, for some reason, just knew in his heart that if he was a bodybuilding champion, it would turn him into a champion in other things in life. I don't know how he had the insight, or it's unbelievable.
So,
It's
he
awesome.
put himself in a position to dominate his art or sport or whatever you want to call it, and then learn to transgen that over to other things. And I think it all starts with the attitude, like we were talking about. He was never afraid to go and give his best at something, all the time. You know what I mean? And have that killer instinct. And I think that's a lot of what we have, and a lot of what Stan has. Just a lot of those guys are they're willing to go after it and bust their fucking ass. And and be around the right people to do it too. He wasn't afraid to move over from Austria or whatever and come to a whole new country just to work out.
Right.
Like we were talking about. I used to drive 3 hours to go train with Chuck Vogelpool. I used to drive 3 hours on Friday and then try to work the car sitting on my ass soreness out before I had to squat with these guys. And the average squat at that time was right around 1,000 pounds in the group.
Yeah.
And I still believe this to this day. That was probably one of the strongest assembled groups I've ever seen. We all could squat over 1,000, and that's where it was just unbelievable.
Who all was in that group?
Me, Greg Panora, Chuck Vogelpool, Phil Harrington,
Who was light?
John Stafford.
Yeah.
Vlada Hasselhoff was there the last 6 months when he squatted the 1250. So that dude was a fucking animal.
He didn't make any sense.
No, I saw things in that gym that I've never seen in my life. I saw him fail.
He deadlifted 925, didn't he?
I saw Chuck Vogelpool literally kick his fucking ass like 3 weeks in a row and beat him on lifts, and he shows up at the meet and then breaks the world record in the squat and then pulls 900. And Chuck was kicking his ass the whole training cycle. But what I started to learn was Vlad wasn't doing all the after the lift, he would do a couple little accessory things to work on some weaknesses, and he would walk away. He was never overtrained.
Right.
And that's where I started learning kind of what was sitting back. I guess what I'm saying is a lot of the champions that I got to be around, which were quite a few, I got to learn just as much of what not to do as I did what to do, as I learned when to shut it down and just wait for another day.
You also learn, like, shit's not always going to go your way. You can't always be the strongest guy.
No.
Even when you're the strongest guy, you're not the strongest guy because you went out and fucking tore up that one meet out in Cincinnati. I think he did 1197 squat maybe on that day. I can't really recall the actual numbers. He had an awesome day. He broke the all-time world record in the
Benched
squat.
815 in a full meet.
Benched 815.
Took best bench, best squat, and then broke the world record total.
You broke the world record total, but then the world record total disappeared 5 seconds later.
3 minutes later.
Yeah, 3 minutes
and nobody
later.
had
3
known.
minutes. Wow.
Nobody had known that Fought. Fought was my training partner. That's another guy that was a big lifter at that time. Chuck Fought pulled 903 at 23 years old,
Gets
and
the
literally
cover,
been lifting
gets
for
the cover of Powerlifting USA, and you're
two
shuffled off to the fucking
years.
depths
Yeah,
of hell.
bullshit. Yeah, but
it's a good lesson though, right? Like
the point of that is that it's always trying to beat your own personal best, and it was great to break that world record. But I never based my entire career off of just those little moments. I always just like to train.
right.
So,
Well, that's it, right? It's a moment, and a moment doesn't make you great anyway.
no.
A moment is literally just a moment, and if you bench 500 pounds once or you squat 1,000 pounds once, in my opinion, it's not enough. And not enough to tout that you're great.
No.
Being
Well, that's the other
great
thing is
would be doing something consistently for a long period of time.
you got to be great compared to all the people that are around you at that time. Because here's the point: me and you both have known Chuck for 20 years.
Yeah.
Chuck's broke 12 world records in the squat at various weight classes. You go ask the average dude right now who Chuck Vogelpool is. He's only been retired for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You ask the average guy who that is, and they're not going to know. And that was another big wake up to me, is I needed to diversify my thought pattern, because at the time that if you trained at Westside at that time with Chuck or any of those guys, that was your life. That you signed away your life.
Yeah.
Like, jobs didn't matter, relationships didn't matter. That was just all it was. I learned what was the point of that intensity. Now, I'm saying it did help me get where I was at, but the point is I knew when to refocus my life.
There's guys at Westside right now killing themselves, smashing huge weights. They're still successful lifters, some of the most successful lifters of all time in geared powerlifting, and nobody knows who they are anymore because they haven't diversified anything. They've stayed the exact same. I think Louis' kind of worst fear was staying the same. And when they came and did that documentary, people are like, "Why do you hate Louis Simmons?" I'm like, I don't fucking hate Louis Simmons. I said it in the thing because as well as I do, when you train there, a guy puts you through hell. So I was like, I love Louis Simmons, and at the same time, I hate him.
Yep.
And I kind of went into a thing, but basically, they have hid from federations. They've bounced around from federation to federation to get lifts passed. They've stayed in their own little canal of geared powerlifting, and everybody sees it. Everybody knows it's fucking. It's transparent. The world is on the internet now.
Yeah.
And Louis' thing was his big thing was always fighting and MMA and stuff. And
I had watched
when the boxers took their gloves off and went into MMA. The same thing happened in powerlifting. People took some of their shit off and they were like, I'm going to see what I'm made of now.
Yep.
And Westside didn't do that. They chose not to do it.
And I think the big thing with all that is, like what you're talking about, is, you have to be able to change with whatever's going on at that time.
Yes.
And
you got to reinvent your shit.
Yeah, you have to be willing to start over again. And I think some guys are just, they just don't do that. But I think really, I posted about it a couple of months ago when a couple of world records got passed that shouldn't have been passed.
Insanity,
and I just posted, well, what's the purpose of this? I mean, I remember back in the day when you trained with Chuck, and if something went like it, he was watching it, and if it didn't look legit to him, he told you to go to the front thing and tell him to take it back.
Wow.
But that was a different time because Chuck and the old timers ran the gym.
All right.
But if you really sit down and talk with Louis about that kind of shit, Louis a big guy on if a judge passes it, it's good. In my opinion, it's what you can withstand as a person.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, now with this video, you have to be proud of what you do because everybody else is going to see it. Back in the old days, nobody saw it, but we all had that pact where we didn't want anything that wasn't given to us because we had respect for that record we were going to take from somebody else.
It was a couple of lines of text in Powerlifting USA, and that's really the only scrutiny that it got.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
and even just like throwing some throwback stuff up. I threw up a 1,000-pound squat recently, and a bunch of people commented, and they're like, "That was deep." It wasn't deep. It was what passed. And it was
A standard of performance at the time.
It was a good squat.
Yeah.
But like it wasn't excessively deep by any means, because who's going to do that in multiply gear? You'll kill yourself. But the point is what you just said, is like, what are you satisfied with? What are you happy with? Am I happy with some cheap ass like quarter squat? And they happen. Some of these things they do happen, right? And we've all gotten a lift where we're like, that was a weird deadlift.
I've had probably two in the the multiply.
You've had a couple that you
now.
thought were good that got turned down too, right? It happens.
It happens for sure.
It's just part of the way the sport is.
I remember getting shit on my heaviest squat, just shot from the front, whatever. But Brent Meixel was one of the side refs, and he gave me a white light, deep. And so that's all I needed.
Yeah, Meixel was a fucking technician, dude.
Oh my God.
That was the one thing that made multiply really good at that time, was that those guys were super strong with or without the stuff, but they also their form didn't change.
Yeah.
I never saw Chuck not break parallel. I never saw Brent Meixel not look like a fucking picture book squat that you would like your raw squat to look like.
Right. Yeah, he was insane.
Same thing with Steve
Squatting
Goggins.
those like work boots and shit back in the day.
Yeah.
Brent Meixel had that video where he did he was doing some good mornings. And he did good mornings, like a set of like 8 reps or 10 reps with 585 just on a regular barbell. Mm-hmm. And he's getting his body fucking like, what's the word? Perpendicular? Is that the right word? Getting his body perpendicular to the fucking ground. And he puts the weight back in the rack. He's like, I challenge anybody else to be able to do that with 585 pounds. You want a strong back and strong hamstrings. He's like, that's what you're going to need to be able to break world records. And I was like, who the fuck else can do that? That's fucking insane. It was crazy. Fucking mind-boggling.
That is crazy.
The way he's able to throw that shit around.
Yeah, those dudes were some beasts.
I'm try to hit up a few more questions here.
Hold that thought, Mark. We'll be back next week with part 2 of this episode. Shout out to all of our sponsors, Reebok.com, home of the Legacy Lifter, 8-Man Apparel for people who lift heavy weights at 8manstrong.com, Compex Muscle Stim products at CompexUSA.com. Use the code PowerCast, get an additional 28% discount. HowMuchInBench.net, home of Mark Bell's Slingshot. Use the code PowerCast and get 15% off Slingshots. Power Magazine, the world's only strength magazine, available in both digital and print at the Power Magazine, thepowermagazine.com, and bodybuilding.com. The world's largest fitness website and supplement store. We'll be back next week. So we're with Michael Fahey, director of Westside Versus the World. You guys are in like a week into your Kickstarter now?
Yeah, we're a weekend today. And how you doing? We're doing pretty good so far. We had a really strong first day. We followed up with a pretty strong first week comparative to most projects. So we're closing in on 43%, I think, right now.
So close to 50% then. And I think that you told me that Kickstarters typically go much bigger at the end than they do like in the middle.
Yeah, I think most people, they kind of hang around and wait to see how the project's doing, and everyone kind of has that sense of urgency at the end, and that's where they all come together and help push the project across the finish. So we were pretty lucky in that we had a whole lot of attention right at the beginning,
right?
Which is where most campaigns struggle, is no one knows that they're happening, versus we had a situation where a big chunk of people knew that it was happening and were really excited for it.
Mm-hmm. So the question that everybody seems to have right now is like, when do you think the movie will be done?
Well, the movie will be done on our end pretty soon. We think right around or a little after the time when the Kickstarter campaign ends. And then if the campaign is successful, and we think it will be, we'll be looking to release sometime in December or January, have our big theatrical premiere, and then start shipping out all the goodies and the rewards right after that.
So are you looking at any of the festivals?
We'll probably submit to some festivals, but we're not in a situation where we're dependent on it. Because again, we've been able to connect with our audience really well and find, Westside fans and find powerlifters. It's a small community, but knowing key players like the PowerCast kind of helps. So we've got a leg up in terms of that. We're not as dependent on someone else sort of opening that door for us.
And what's the actual release strategy? Are you going to go straight to DVD? Are you going to do theatrical, or do you know at this point?
Yeah, well, right now we're going to do a theatrical release. How many cities that'll be, we don't really know. We've had screening requests from over 75 cities worldwide, a lot in Canada, a lot in the UK, a lot in Australia. So it kind of just comes, and then of course throughout the US. So we're gonna have our big premiere in Columbus and try and get all the guys and really try and create like sort of a powerlifting, Woodstock for one night. And then beyond that, it's going to be like a lot of films that I've worked on before. We've always done a rolling release where, it'll screen in a town over here and then a town over here, and for one night only. And as long as we can keep packing the theaters, and as long as we can, keep it profitable. So we're looking at anywhere from say 10 to 50 cities, that kind of range. And then certainly if it's like, a couple films I've worked on in the past where that goes really well and then a bigger distributor wants to get in, then we're open to opening it up from there. But odds are it'll probably be a limited city, small city tour, trying to coordinate that with different gyms and CrossFit boxes and areas where people were involved in the film, and areas that are just, pretty heavy. There's a pretty strong scene. And from there, it'll be DVDs and then eventually DVDs and downloads, and then eventually open up to streaming.
Let me ask you this question. What does the average powerlifter now, the raw lifter who never lifted in gear, what do they get from this movie, do you think? What is it about the Westside experience that will resonate with them?
I think what will resonate with everyone, and this is whether you're in gear, whether you're raw, whether you're a power lifter, or whether, like me, you were a kid who started off, training so that you could, try and earn a football scholarship. I think what will really translate to everybody is the idea that, these are guys who are putting their all into a specific goal. And they, really that idea of sacrificing for what it is that you want. And, there's a lot of people out there who, they put the beast mode hashtag and hashtag grind time and stuff. But to see the difference between, what a lot of guys do, a lot of sort of the recreational lifters, and to see what is that difference, especially in a sport like powerlifting where there isn't a sort of clear cut, there's not a huge semantical difference between an amateur and, say a Ray Williams or a guy who's, lighting it up at the top. It's not like there's a league that separates people, but to see for these guys for so long what it took to get to the top and what kind of focus and devotion they had.
So really the motivation and the mindset.
The motivation, the mindset, and then also for the younger sort of, raw, heavy guys, just to understand where your sport kind of came from.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that from, 1977 basically until, the late 2000s, there wasn't raw, like there was, and to see how did the sport get to that point where suddenly guys said we need to have a raw division again.
Right. Where it's suddenly gone so far that we need to back off and make it more accessible, I guess.
Yeah, and just, if you grew up sort of through the sport, you can understand how it got where it is.
Yeah.
And if you're new and you've just come to it, it's this weird era that doesn't make any sense looking backwards.
Mm-hmm.
But also just the idea that, like, every other sport, baseball's got a million movies. Basketball's got their movies. Everyone else has their movies. Everyone else has their, piece of pop culture. Everyone else has their idea of history. Mm-hmm. And for, strength sports, but particularly for powerlifting, we don't really have that. So
right.
Westside being a huge piece of, what has shaped powerlifting and what, took it through the twists and turns that it went through. I just thought it was a good story, and a story that a lot of people can benefit from.
Yeah, I know that you've been really committed to this idea since the very beginning. We talked about this years ago now, and you actually sort of threw the idea out to me, and I said, geez, yeah, I mean, for sure, but man, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, most of the people that I went to with this idea, and you're kind of like soft selling the sort of, it was more like a warning or a strong, a push to maybe reconsider or consider all the consequences of it. But it was definitely a difficult process. There's a reason that this movie hasn't been done before. It's not because other people haven't ever wanted to do it. I'm not the first person to have this idea. I'm our team was just the first team that sort of was able to get it done and able to get the opportunity. So we're thankful for that, but it doesn't mean that it was easy.
And I'm sure it's not over in terms of adversity.
No, not until not until I've collected checks and moved on to the next thing. Like, this is no cakewalk.
Yeah, for sure. What's your most popular participation level on Kickstarter right now?
Right now, far and away, the most popular level is simply the DVD. And what we've done is we put together a 3 DVD set. So the first disc is the movie. And I know a lot of people, they don't use DVD and whatnot. So in addition to that, we've thrown in, with the $40 version, we've thrown in an HD download. So no matter what your situation, if you're on Blu-ray, we got you covered. If you're, like me, and you've moved straight on to smart TVs and streaming devices, we got you covered. We shot the thing in 4K. It's, a pain in the ass to shoot big 4K projects like this. So we want everyone to enjoy that nice HD look. This is a real movie.
Right.
But then discs 2 and 3 are where, like low key, we really offer a lot of value. We in doing this, we talk to coaches from all sorts of sports, and we talk to them about how they integrate these lessons from powerlifting and specifically from Westside. But there's a whole lot of stuff in terms of how they take, what Louis, and those guys developed for the bench, the squat, and the deadlift. Mm-hmm. How do you take that and then apply it to football? We talk to NFL and collegiate coaches, national championship winning coaches, Super Bowl appearing winning coaches. We talk to them about how do you take that standard sort of 4-day Westside split, how do you take that and then make it work? What does it look like for your sport? Mm-hmm. And then we did the same thing with track and field. We did the same thing with MMA and combat sports and boxing. And, we talked to guys for the Army and for military and for fire. And we even got some Olympic lifting in there. So there's sort of that standard Westside template that everyone knows and everyone has opinions on. But when you see how these coaches integrate things, no two sports, it doesn't look the same for any two sports, and it doesn't look the same for any two teams. And so to see the different lessons that these guys pull out of it and how they apply it and how they put it together and make it work for this broad variety of uses.
That's awesome. And you know, Westside is a template. People lose track of the fact that it's a template. It's not a program, it's a template. So how can people get involved?
People can get involved by contributing to the Kickstarter. And how Kickstarter works is it's an all or nothing campaign. So we've raised about 43% of our goal right now. By the end of today, or by the time that you all see this, we're probably going to be, up around 50%. And we're still going to have about 45 days left to go. And that's great. We're really excited about that. But what happens is if we don't hit 100% of our goal, then we don't get any of the money. Everyone who's ordered gets refunded, and none of that merchandise goes out. And on top of that, then the movie release, because that's what this was all for, is to pay for licensing, lawyers, various insurances and theater bookings and things like that, recording the narration, color correction, all that kind of stuff. Everything that basically we can't defer as man-hour costs, all those expenses just right at the end. If we don't have money for that, then we can't put the movie out.
Right.
And that means that it'll be delayed again. And it could be, another 6 months or another year on top of that January type date that we're looking at until it comes out again. So the biggest thing that we can do is, for people to continue contributing to the Kickstarter. To find that, go to westsideversustheworld.com, and on the tab at the top, click pre-order, or go through Kickstarter and search Westside Versus the World. It'll come up. Follow us on social media. And once you've contributed, it doesn't stop there. Go tell other people. Just get the word out. There's enough powerlifters. There's enough Westside fans. There's enough, kids using powerlifting principles to try and get better at their sports. There's enough people who want this. The key is getting that campaign out in front of as many people as we can. And that's why we've tried to put as much value into each of the levels, especially the lower levels, because we understand that, not everybody's got tons of liquid cash to throw around on things. So,
right. And I think it's a good way for powerlifting to show the world that, people are interested. People are willing to get behind a project like this.
Yeah. I mean, to the earliest days of doing this project, people across the film industry, I went and talked to other producers and documentary filmmakers, and people just within the industry, within the entertainment industry, just did not believe that there was a market. No matter how many, equipment sales that I showed them or YouTube views that I showed them, they somehow don't believe that these people are real and that this is a thing that people are into. So if one project is successful, if we're successful, that's going to lead to opportunities for other people. That's going to lead to opportunities for reality, TV, other documentaries,
right,
shows. It's going to lead to, better sponsorships. Supporting this really does, it validates the market for so many other opportunities, opportunities that I'll never get a chance to even take advantage of, but opportunities for other people down the line.
Yeah, your next project's probably not powerlifting, let's just say.
Yeah, probably not.
Time to task off to something else.
Yeah, I'll probably go to something else for a while. I'll continue lifting, but I'm going to let somebody else get the next one.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Michael.
Thanks.
Best of luck. I'm sure you guys are going to hit that goal and just bust it wide open.
I hope.
All right. Thanks a lot.